All right, hello everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Shake and Bake F1 podcast. I'm your host, RJ McCullough. Adrian Huff, my co-host, could not make it this week. He's doing rehearsals all week, so you're stuck with me for a solo episode. But got lots of good stuff to talk about this week. Plenty of topics. Got the videos to put in the episode, so it's not just looking at this mug the whole time. Going to start off with a quick congratulations to Carlos Sainz. Didn't necessarily have that much competition after Max went out, but still an impressive victory, especially after what he's gone through over the last few weeks. So congratulations to Carlos Sainz. And we now have, interestingly, total, I believe Max, if you go back to the beginning of the 2023 season, I believe Max Verstappen has 22 victories. Wow, 22 victories. And then Sergio Perez has 2 victories, and now Carlos Sainz has 2 victories. And that's it. Those are the only 3 drivers that have victories going back to last season. So pretty impressive stuff from Carlos Sainz, a man that does not have a drive for 2025. So we'll obviously get into that a little bit later as we go. But going to start this week with grinds my gears, as we always do. No, that's the wrong transition. Let's try this again. Let's start this off with grinds my gears. There we go. Grind my gears. What's grinding my gears this week? Well, let me tell you what's grinding my gears this week. What's grinding my gears this week is the Fernando Alonso penalty that he received at the end of the Australian Grand Prix. Now, it's not necessarily the fact that he got a penalty. It's kind of the wording in which the penalty was given. And I believe it was a 20-second drive-through penalty, which dropped him from 6th to 8th. I should have written that down because I could be wrong, but hey, let's see what that's what it is. That's not my point. My point is the wording of it, the Alonso penalty, which is at no time, I repeat, at no time, may a car be driven unnecessarily slowly, erratically, or in a manner which could be deemed potentially dangerous to other drivers or any other person. Now, let me share my screen for a second here. Take you back to 2021. Yes, I'm biased. Yes, I love Lewis Hamilton. But I want to show this to you, and keep in mind the wording, at no time may a car be driven unnecessarily slowly.
Here, Perez as absolutely on the limit and as fair as he can be.
Okay, back him up.
As they make their way around the final 2 turns, Hamilton's going to try and get Perez into turn 1 and have to go the long way around the outside to do it, and can't quite do it. Perez playing the ultimate team game here for Max Verstappen, and this is really frustrating Lewis Hamilton. It's going to be hurting his tyres a little bit as well. Perez and Hamilton in the 130.
Interesting. Now, stop sharing that. Now it starts out, things are fine. They're driving well. Even Crofty says, they're driving fair, they're driving safe. And then immediately, Sergio Perez's radio comms guy come on and says, back him up, back him up, back him up. A couple seconds later, or maybe a couple laps later, we have Max Verstappen going from 8 seconds down to less than a second down. And we have a few instances of corners in which Lewis Hamilton has to take in a manner to which he says that's some dangerous driving. Now, what's the difference between these two things? Let me show you George's onboard when he crashed. Okay.
2 laps remaining.
All right, so we're going through the corners. All right, not too bad. Alonso just trying to keep him behind. So you tell me, was I ever an F1 race engineer? No, absolutely not. But I don't know. If you were to ask me which one was more slowing a guy down on purpose, when they both admitted they were slowing guys down on purpose, but why is one applauded as the greatest defense in the history of F1, and one is given a 20-second penalty and potentially is called a brake test? Now, you want to see a brake test? Let me bring my screen back up. I'll show you a brake test. Here we
Told
go.
to give it back. Maybe Lewis doesn't know that.
If you're going to give the place back, Martin, don't you want to be one side of the track or the other? Not in the middle of it.
Just brake tested me. I've just hit it, man. My wing's broken.
Now, again, I'm no race engineer, but one thing seems to be a little more dangerous to me than the others. One thing seems to be applauded while the other is given a 20-second penalty, and Alonso is being accused of dangerous driving, brake testing. Some people are even going as far as to say he's potentially going to lose the option to drive a Mercedes next year because of this, which is a ridiculous thing to say. But that's what's grinding my gears this week, is not necessarily that Alonso's getting a penalty, because, for example, the clip I just showed of Verstappen brake testing Lewis, he did get a penalty for that. It almost didn't matter, if not for Lewis having a heroic drive. But I'm not going to go into that too much detail, because obviously I'm biased, and just having to bring up 2021 Abu Dhabi has me feeling a certain sort of way. So what's grinding my gears is the fact that there's a lot of hypocrisy, and yes, we should be able to grow and develop as time goes by, but if the definition for the penalty is at no time may a car be driven unnecessarily slowly, they were literally telling Perez to back up Hamilton, back him up, back him up, back him up, is the exact words used on his radio comms. So, you tell me. You tell me. All right, what's next here? Did you know? Let's move off that into something a little more happy, hearing it show on my screen one more time. Did you know? Every year, a team finished 1-2 in the Australian Grand Prix in Melbourne. That team has gone on to win both the Drivers' Championship and the Constructors' Championship. I repeat, every year a team finished 1-2 in the Australian Grand Prix in Melbourne. That team has gone on to win both the Drivers' Championship and the Constructors' Championship. And Laura Berlinski is wondering who wants to have some fun with her. Good luck with that, Laura. All right. So that's an interesting fact. Now, do I think that Ferrari are going to win both the Drivers' and Constructors' Championship this year? No, I do not. I think at this point you'd be a little silly to have that thought. But I do think that they could win the Constructors. And let's take a look here at the drivers standings and the constructor standings. Driver standings, Max, I mean, it is pretty close, but keep in mind, Max just DNF'd. And he won the first two races with one of them fastest lap. Max 51, Charles Leclerc 47, Sergio Perez 46, Carlos Sainz 40. If Carlos Sainz did not drive in Jeddah when Ollie Behrman stepped in and did a wonderful job. But if Carlos Sainz were to have raced there, you got to think he would have finished at worst fourth. You got to think he would be the one currently leading the Drivers' Championship right now. So that's pretty interesting to think about. So I don't know. Do I think that Carlos Sainz or Charles or Sergio Perez, for that matter, have any chance of beating Max in the long term this year? No, I actually do not think that. But it is interesting to think about what could happen in the constructor standings, because Sergio Perez it looks like, even with the fastest car that is Rebel still, does look like he's going to be the fourth best driver this year, unless someone else can step up and even surpass him for that. So in that case, like right now we have Rebel 97, Ferrari 93. Again, if you give Carlos Sainz, obviously they got the points from Ollie Behrman, but if you tack on a couple more points from that, they're only 4 points back already. So realistically, they would be leading the Constructors' Championship. If they continue to get seconds and thirds, getting over 30 points a race, while Max is winning 25 points, then that puts a lot of pressure on Sergio Perez to keep up behind him. And fourth place obviously would probably do the job. If I'm doing the math, 33, 39. So they'll still be winning if they get in first and fourth over second and third. But yeah, very interesting thing to watch this year. I think it's maybe not as cut and dry as we thought it was with the Ferrari car seeming to be getting better every single week, seeming to be stepping up. And it also bodes well for Lewis Hamilton for next season, which I'm always very excited about. But yeah, that's my did you know. That is something I'm excited to watch the rest of the season going forward. A couple talking points from the Australian GP. Not going to go like lap by lap or anything, but a couple talking points. Number one, Alex Albon taking Logan Sargent's car. This to me was, I don't know, I've never really seen anything like this. Obviously, we've seen guys back out of races. We've seen guys be replaced. I've never seen one guy crash and another guy take his spot. Like, that just didn't, quite frankly, it didn't seem fair. I think Logan Sargent handled it very, very well. So to recap, those who didn't see, Alex Albon in a practice session crashed his car. They weren't able to repair it in time for qualifying or even for the next practice session. So instead of Alex Albon just being out for the weekend because he didn't have a car, they had to go to Logan Sargent and be like, hey, listen, Logan, we know you didn't do a single thing wrong, and Alex was the one that crashed, but you're going to have to sit out this weekend, and Alex is going to drive your car. And Alex didn't end up getting any points, so tough break for Logan. I mean, obviously the decision makes sense from Williams' standpoint. They're battling to get any points they can this season. Every point matters, and not having Alex drive is just not good for them. Obviously, he gives them a better chance of getting points than Logan does, but pretty disappointing weekend for Logan Sargent. I think he said it was the most disappointing or toughest weekend of his racing life. I don't know if that's ever happened in F1 history. What do we got next? Max and Lewis out. Okay, so the second that Max Verstappen's car started sputtering, obviously, Carlos Sainz first passed him, and I was like, holy shit, we might have a race here. And then his car started sputtering. I thought it was an engine failure. I guess it was something to do with the brake ducts or something of that nature. Again, I'm not a race engineer, but the second that car started sputtering and having smoke, was I standing up being like a giddy little child? Yes, it was. Do I root for anything bad to happen to anyone? No, but when we've had just 2 straight years of absolute domination, bordering on now 2.5 years from Red Bull, and extreme reliability, extreme Max Verstappen winning everything, was I happy that he was out of the race for once? Yes, I'm not going to sit here and deny that. I was happy. I was giddy. I was telling everyone that I could tell, oh my God, Max Verstappen is out. Max Verstappen is out. We might actually have a race for the first time in forever. That kind of came back to bite me in the ass not too long after, because then my guy, Lewis Hamilton, who's having what he has even admitted is the worst start to an F1 season in his F1 career. Well, then his car had issues just a few laps later, and he had to bow out of the race too. So, of course, the one time that Max Verstappen can't finish a race, Lewis Hamilton also couldn't finish a race. So that was pretty tough, a tough pill to swallow for Lewis fans. Not that Lewis was going to win or anything, but so that I guess would have been even more frustrating if it looked like Lewis was, or if Lewis was in first and then his car had issues. That would have been more frustrating. But bit of maybe instant. I don't want to say karma, but bit of instant karma for this guy right here. That was a tough pill to swallow. So I don't know what's going on with Mercedes. I don't know. I don't even want to get into that because that's just going to piss me off. Next, I want to talk a little bit about Carlos Sainz. Pretty miraculous couple weeks. I mean, he went from having his appendix removed to us not even knowing if he was going to be able to drive this week. Starting in practice session 1, we were like, Ollie Behrman was there ready to go. We weren't even sure if Carlos Sainz was going to be able to drive. And then not only does he drive, but he puts in a mega performance. Extremely impressive. Dominates. I mean, I know Sergio Perez said that even if Max was driving, Carlos Sainz would have won the race. I don't necessarily know if that's true, but it was kind of a little bit ironic that we've waited so long for just a good race. All we wanted was a good race, and it seemed like the one thing that needed to happen for it not to be a good race was, quite frankly, Max Verstappen to DNF, and we got that. And still, we didn't really have a good race because Carlos Sainz just pulled so far ahead of everyone. I know it got not even close at the end, but the times, if you look at them at the end, seemed a little closer. But if I recall correctly, on the last lap, he said, like, all right, let's get Charles up here so we can finish closer to me. Yeah, bit disappointing in that sense, but just extremely dominant and extremely impressive all the way around for Carlos Sainz. He has really moved his way up in the pecking order. I'm not going to say he's underrated because he's rated quite highly, but his prospects for next season, obviously he's being replaced by Lewis at Ferrari, but his prospects for next season are looking very, very strong. I think the teams I think it's really like a 3-team race to get Carlos, unless he wants to like go to a new team, an Audi or something, which I don't really see the point of that. I think the first option is Red Bull, the second option is Mercedes, and the third option as a bit of a wild card is Aston Martin, especially if Fernando Alonso, his fellow Spaniard, goes to Mercedes, and maybe Sainz goes to Aston Martin. But I do think, especially if Red Bull isn't able to win the Constructors' Championship this year because of Sergio Perez not being able to keep up with the Ferraris and that costing them, then I think Red Bull is quickly becoming a very viable option for Carlos Sainz. And I think that's a dangerous thing for the rest of the field, because if they have Max and Carlos, I don't know. That's going to be very, very interesting between Red Bull and Ferrari next year with Lewis in the Ferrari. That is a dynamic duo that is going to be very, very difficult to beat. I don't know if, like we've seen with Carlos, that sometimes, not necessarily to a fault, but sometimes he'll prioritize himself over Charles. Sometimes drivers have to do that. I think the second Red Bull seat, they want someone that's going to take a backseat to Max. I don't know if Carlos is that guy, but if they want the two best drivers they can have, I think that Carlos Sainz taking that Red Bull seat next year is seeming like the most likely option, at least at this point right now. We could see. George Russell's crash. Now, I've already gone over what I think of the penalty. You can see in the onboard that Alonso did slow down on these corners, but that's just to maximize his exit and get the most speed going into the next turn, or out of that turn. And share my screen once again, because what ended up happening was kind of scary, and I went from being a little bit happy selfishly that George Russell crashed out because Lewis also was in the race, to feeling bad for George Russell, something I never really thought would happen. I mean, he is kind of having a bit of a pattern of crashing on the last laps, which got to be the most frustrating thing in the world. You go through all of that and then crash on the last lap. But his onboard was quite scary. I'm going to share it. I'm really hoping the audio is picking up from these. It's also share tab. I have that click also. All right, so listen in.
Red flag, red flag, red flag. I'm in the middle of a track.
Okay.
Red flag, red flag.
Red flag, you got Stroll.
Red, 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 red. I'm in the middle. Red. Fuck.
So that's not fun to listen to. That's scary. I mean, these guys. It's interesting hearing a guy like with such clear fear in his voice, and I don't mean that in a negative way. I mean, I would be shitting my pants literally, but the risks and what these guys go through all the time, like they go so fast, they are on such a knife's edge, they take so many risks. So it's a little interesting hearing that switch instantly to, like, clearly he was terrified that there was gonna be another car coming around. If they didn't throw a red flag right away, which they didn't, that car would ram right into him, and also he was flipped over, so he couldn't even see what was coming at him. The fear of that another F1 car coming around and hitting him. I mean, I didn't want to play with the whole clip because it takes a little while, but when they show, like, he turns, you can see his eyes, like he looks like he'd just seen a ghost. So I think maybe a little combination of anger and embarrassment a little bit for crashing that late in the race, but just the fear was palpable and very scary. But you don't really see that emotion from an F1 driver, and totally understandable. This isn't me taking a shot at George, because I'm not a big fan of George. I'll just come out and say that. I've said it before on this podcast. I'm not a big fan of George. So if I wanted to take a shot at him, I would. I'm not, because that's completely understandable in that situation. And it was a very interesting clip. So just wanted to share that for those that didn't see it. I also wanted to discuss Daniel Ricciardo. Got a bit of a tough break in qualifying, that his lap didn't count, but he's not performing well this year. He's just not performing well. He came into the season touted to be the next guy in the Red Bull seat next year. Like, he's supposed to be the one dominating. I think Yuki's outqualified him and outperformed him, I want to say, in all 3 races this year. I could be wrong on that, but pretty disappointing, pretty wild stuff. Yeah, he was. Christian Horner brought him back because he wanted him to be the guy to replace Sergio Perez. They obviously have a very close relationship. But it's looking at this point like that's just not going to happen. He has time to turn it around, of course, but you would have thought if any race he would have kind of been able to put it together. It would have been his home race. And that just didn't happen. Disappointing all the way around. Not a good race for Daniel. And there's been some rumors that have since been shot down by Helmut Marko, but usually in the rumor game at F1, a lot of the times at least, there's a little grain of truth for whether they change their mind or whatever. But there was some rumors starting to percolate that at the end of the Asian swing, our next two races, Japan and China, if Daniel doesn't pick it up, he's going to be replaced immediately by Liam Lawson. And at this point, I don't think anyone could really necessarily disagree with that decision if it were to happen. Like, Liam Lawson was incredible last year. I think more impressive than what Ollie Behrman did at Jeddah. Not to take away from that, because that was impressive too. But I was extremely impressed by Liam Lawson last year. He deserved to have a seat. If you watch Drive to Survive, you can see how pissed off he was not to have a seat. He made a good point. Like, I just beat the guy that I'm supposed to be competing for multiple times for the seat, and they gave him the seat. And so he was better than Daniel and Yuki. Obviously, he was racing for Daniel because Daniel was hurt, but for Daniel to come in and not be better than Yuki is it's pretty disappointing. So that's kind of all I have on Danny. We'll continue to follow that. I don't know if he's going to be replaced in 2 weeks. I think maybe if we get to the summer break and he still hasn't stepped up, then it's time to give Liam Lawson another shot, because I don't think they want to promote Yuki Tsunoda to the Red Bull seat next year. They did want Daniel Ricciardo. That's sliding away. So if it's not going to be Yuki, it's not going to be Danny. I think they should give Liam Lawson a chance to prove that he's the guy instead of Carlos Sainz, because that seems to be where we're heading. But you know, that's time will tell on that one. But that's kind of it for my talking points on that. The bets segment that we always do. Adrian and I finally both hit a bet. So yay, claps to us. We both hit a bet. I had Max to get pole. Bet $26.50 at 1.53 odds. Hit that. So my total, so net of about $40. So my total has moved up to $107.05. Adrian had Charles Leclerc podium, $20 at 1.66. So his total goes up from $60 to $93.20. So currently RJ 107.05. Adrian 93.20. What else we got here? One last segment, and that is the shout out / quote of the week. Shout out of the week here. I've got two. The first one, they're both negative. They're both negative shout outs, but they are shout outs nonetheless. Show me screen. First one. Toto Wolff told Lewis Hamilton he'll have to, quote, picture our rear wing from F1 2025. I want to scroll down here. And the quote, I think first I can't imagine him in red. That wasn't great. Johnny. Should have practiced this first, because I think I actually do a pretty good Toto, but that wasn't it. I'm just going to read it in a normal voice. I think first I can't imagine him in red, Toto added. I think it suits him, but I think that picture is going to be interesting. And then I told him, you've got to really picture our rear wing, because that's the perspective you're going to have. Papa Nickel. And then I told him, you've got to really picture our rear wing, because that's the perspective you're going to have. Mercedes has scored 26 points to endure its worst start to an F1 season since 2012, while Ferrari recorded a 1-2 finish in Australia to move within 4 points of Red Bull. I know Toto said that in a cheeky, joking manner, but quote's already not eating very well. So that's my first shout out, is to Toto's stupid quote. Second one, this one, sometimes there's a reason people don't like Lewis, and this isn't Lewis's fault. Lewis went shooting, or gun shooting, to a gun range, whatever, with Keanu Reeves. I don't know what you would call it. Keanu Reeves is gun teacher for the John Wick movies, and proceeded to say Lewis is the most naturally gifted individual to ever visit the gun range. And that, I'm just going to play the quote here. Play the clip here.
Lewis Hamilton. He's literally like at an A-class level his first time ever.
First time shooting ever, or first time
He never shot before. And I texted him later. I called him later. I said, are you lying? He's like, well, one time I shot a rifle, like one shot in the snow somewhere. I'm like, well, that doesn't count. So he's just unreal. Like, if I had him more often, he would be unbelievable. So he's the best that's ever held a gun, not just at my place. I would say that's ever walked the earth.
That's not hyperbole. I don't know what it is. At the end, he's like, not just at my place. but to ever walk the earth. I mean, that is an insane thing to say. Yes, obviously he has extremely good reaction time and reflexes, as any F1 driver does. But to say that he's the best to ever hold a gun and the best first-time shooter of all time, I think it's a ridiculous comment. As much as I love and adore Lewis Hamilton, that's just simply not true. Like, there's just no way that that's true. But hey, I saw that, made me laugh. Thought I'd show it to you guys as well. Yeah, I think that's pretty much going to wrap it up. Not exactly sure what the podcast schedule next week is going to be. I am going to beautiful British Columbia to meet my girlfriend's parents, so good luck to me on that one. But looking forward to that. But I'll be gone from this Friday to next Friday or Saturday. I never like to miss an episode, so I'll probably just record from my phone or something. Let me know if you guys like or don't like the video screen sharing, if the video quality on it came out well or not. I enjoy doing this on my own, but obviously it's nice to have someone to bounce ideas off of sometimes. But yeah, that is just about it for this week's Shake and Bake F1 podcast. And just remember, as always, if you're not first, you're last.